Can you even imagine the horror of what it must have felt like to be bound in chains? Because you're black and you're strong and you're unarmed while your woman is crying and your babies are crying, and by the whip of a satanic colonialist, he refuses to allow you to use your own name, your own language. He took your babies from you and your wife that you never seen them again, and then he called you all slaves, and then he took your woman right in front of you and passed her to his friends, and you couldn't do nothing but work for him for free and say, yes sir, yes master, yes sir boss, cause you was broken to the point that you received his name. And he told you, slave, my name is your name and your children's name for all your generations, because you're mine and they're mine. And 400 years later, they still all have his last name. Who's the American-born punk privileged to say nobody was born a slave and nobody owns a slave? To a black man or a woman for being passionate in our contempt for systemic racism and racial injustice. You want to ignore America's accountability for the present conditions of the black community. So, black children, this is what you need to know. You will be taught in your schools that slavery was abolished in 1865. That's a lie. No one was freed from slavery. The American government brought us from our slave owners, and the price that they paid to the slave masters are the only reparations that America has ever paid. And so they give you Dr. Martin Luther King, God bless his soul. Dr. King said that without America's promise of 40 acres and a mule, that it was a miracle that we survived, because we were free to be homeless, freedom to be hungry, freedom to the winds and the rains of heaven, with nowhere for the black man and woman to go, without land to cultivate of our own, to give us a way to thrive independently in America's economy. And so America made the slave catchers who used to catch runaway slaves the police, who could arrest free homeless black people for loitering, literally having nowhere to go, thrown in jail, and even to this day, jail is the place where slave labor is still legal due to the 13th Amendment in the United States of America. And black people are disproportionately targeted for incarceration, just as we were when slavery allegedly ended. No choice but to return to live and to work at plantations where slave masters who had already been paid reparations would then take advantage of us by paying us slave wages. And it kept us so poor that we would end up in debt to them. So black people were still being born slaves after 1865. So what should actually be banned from schools and college campuses is this narrative that after 1865 we were born free, because we wasn't. We couldn't even drink from the same water fountains as white people. We had to get our food from the back door of a restaurant because they wouldn't let us eat in the dining area. So it's fair to say that any black man or woman who was born a second-class citizen before civil rights was born a slave. My mother and father were born slaves. My mother and father were born second-class citizens. My uncle remembers wandering through a neighborhood as a child under the age of 10 and seeing one of his classmates on her porch warning him, "You better hurry up and run before they kill you." That is the man who is still breathing today that these racists say doesn't deserve reparation. Yes, he does. So, never let a self-righteous, narcissistic, hypocritical, racist asshole gaslight you and then think that you're supposed to embrace them like a brother or a sister. As in Ahmaud's case, who's a Lebanese and Syrian mixed-born American who was raised in Clearwater, Florida, most of his life, tried to do with me. When he said reparations for slavery being paid to African descendants of slavery is unjust because he refuses to pay taxes for a debt that's not his. And he said, hell, my family ain't even from here. Nobody was born a slave and nobody owns a slave. And then Ahmaud looks at Black America and says, ain't nothing holding black people back with all the successful black people walking around here and people making it in America fresh off the boat. While Ahmaud himself has had something holding him back at the age of 25, while his Muslim peers in his community have already gotten their education, but compared to him, he still doesn't have his degree. Although he went to great schools his entire life, and his mother had been grooming him to become a doctor ever since he was a little kid, his word to me was that he took time off to find himself because he was suffering from the parental abuse he knew as a child, and if he hadn't done that, he wouldn't be the man that he is. But wait a minute, he's saying nothing holding Black America back that's born in the ghettos, but compared to him, when they're abused, they don't got the countryside wreck to go to where they can sit by the lake and fall asleep and be safe and just get their mind together. They don't get to ride around to the national parks and do handstands in the field of daisies and go to Florida Springs and, travel through caves and all this other stuff that he does to find himself. They're in concrete jungles, overcrowded cities. He knows nothing about growing up in the hood. He has no clue about what's holding us back. He went to a school and walking distance from a beach that looks like a Caribbean island, and he has never been outside the state of Florida until very recently. He ain't never see across the United States how everywhere that there's a Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard, it's always a black community, and despite there being money in the city, it's always the poorest part of town where the sidewalks are cracked and the streets have potholes. So when somebody tells you that nobody owns a slave, corporations own slaves in prison, where again, blacks are disproportionately targeted for incarceration. It shouldn't even be legal for a prison to be privately owned as to allow anyone to profit from the criminalities that exist in poverty. Because here we go again with Dr. Martin Luther King, the words that he has spoken that they never let you hear. He preached about how white supremacists use statistics to cast a false image of what the black man is to the world. Dr. Martin Luther King preached, letting y'all know that those statistics are attributes of poverty and not the color of the skin of the people who live in it. Every race of people who lived in poverty did the same things. They killed each other, there was single-parent families, there was alcoholism, there was addiction, there was theft. All of that happens in poverty, and those are not attributes of you because you're black. That is not a black thing. The Irish lived in poverty, did the same thing. The Italians lived in poverty, did the same thing. Don't we have, as American culture, all the Italian mob movies that shows us how they got it? The Chinese did the same thing. Black people do the same thing in poverty. Poverty is the problem, not the people. Here's your freedom papers.